And we're live. Welcome everybody to another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, May 18th, 2020. We'll be following along in the issue that was created in the NPM RFCs repo, issue 588, and I'll share that here for reference for folks. I've also copy and pasted the meeting notes doc, which is also here in chat. Feel free to add yourselves as attendees, and we'll be trying to take notes diligently as possible. Apologize for the spam. And just quickly want to note that these calls and all comms on the RFC's repo are covered under Code of Conduct, which is linked there. We ask that you please be kind to each other on these calls and raise your hand if you'd like to speak when someone else is speaking. Also want to quickly give the floor for announcements. We have a V9 roadmap, which we're updating regularly here and have been doing some planning, trying to get out the last few features and bugs in V8 before we cut over to sort of cutting V9 releases, and want to get this on folks' radar. Feel free to give us feedback. Let us know about any breaking changes that might affect you. And we're going to try to do a better job here as we move from V8 to V9 to make sure that folks know about what's changing. So feel free to comment in that issue. Yeah, we can try to address any concerns you have in comments there. Also want to note that our team is headed to Austin in early June to meet up with community and also to be a part of the Collab Summit. And that's for OpenJS World. I believe it's June 6th to the 10th is the week that folks will be there. I believe there's some discount codes, etc., going around if you haven't got a ticket yet. And we can try to find the right folks to get you hooked up if you haven't already decided to head out there. There's also virtual options for folks that don't want to meet up in person. I think this is going to be a great conference, so hopefully folks will attend, and we're hoping to meet y'all in person after a few years away. So want to give the floor for anybody else if anybody else had any announcements. If not, we can just dive into the agenda we had. Issue number 581, RFC, add messages or opt-out support for non-registered tarball URLs. Owen, I think this is one of the issues you made.
Yeah, the feedback from last week was that it was good to proceed to an RFC. I'll be able to do that for by the time of next week's meeting.
Cool. Is it okay if I take it off the agenda for now and then we can label the RFC once it's right? Cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Moving on to RFC 566, command-specific configuration. This is my RFC. I haven't seen any updates from anybody else. I know that this is basically blocked, and I'll actually add the comment here. Action items needs command audits and audits. Yeah, just I think that we've referenced this in a couple calls, but I think a blocker to this is clearly documenting the commands that call other commands and potentially would share config. So I think that audit needs to be done. I haven't had time to look into it, but I'm just going to document it here in the PR and then maybe remove the agenda label so it doesn't pop up next week if there's no updates. Needs command and config audit. moving on to the next item that we had. So this is RFC 564, the dependency selector syntax and npm query command. I think the update here is that myself and Roy went over the last 2 weeks, I think had 2 sessions, maybe 2 or 3 sessions cleaning up the RFC itself. I think we addressed a number of the concerns, including the biggest one, which what we were concerned about was attributes query dynamically created, I think, pseudo selectors, which essentially would have eaten up the namespace, like the pseudo selector namespace. That was originally a strategy that I thought could be used to try to dynamically iterate over objects and arrays, which is not something that like HTML or CSS sort of has that capability to do. The way that we were sort of able to navigate that, and if you look at the RFC as it is written today, and I can potentially even share my screen here, so long as I get rid of everything else that might be sensitive. I guess the update to that is
open a new window, might be more, safer.
More safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Did everybody see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. And apologize for the resolution and the size of it. So the changes here that were made that are probably the most significant are the introduction of an attribute. Where is it? Sorry, a attribute selector. I think this is an old rendered version, actually. Close this. I should update this rendered version. So
Yeah.
people aren't confused. Apologies. That's an old link. So yes, the biggest change here is the attribute selector, our query selector. So it's essentially :adder, which would be utilized in the same manner that had originally been proposed to iteratively walk objects and arrays using sort of that original idea of the key mapping to sort of these nested query selectors. So it's a bit terse for sure, I think, of syntax, but it's sort of unlocks a lot of capabilities. We're still using attribute selectors, and changed what the other change here, which was a suggestion from I know Jordan, the original special key that we were using for selection was, I think, value, and we've changed that to item. That was another key here. But yeah, essentially, this is a way for us to dynamically let you iterate over and query values that might be in your package JSON using this query selector.
Why item or value? Like JQ uses like a dot to mean this thing. So like, why not
use a dot
or some other like?
Yeah.
What is the syntax you're talking about, Jordan?
Like
So,
instead of item, you'd
yeah.
have just a dot there, and it would mean each thing in this list, apply this selector on each item, right? Like it just does it without making an English word be special. I know it's not a strong pushback. It's just a like thought I had.
I mean, I'm okay with us changing that. I'm totally easy with what gets used there. Yeah. It is a special case, like essentially iterating over arrays. How can we reuse the attribute selector syntax without introducing something net new? And so like, I thought using yeah, like I guess a special key or something like that would make sense.
You could also have empty square brackets. You know, like there's like anything you pick is going to be a little weird, and people are going to have to learn it. So it's not a huge deal. But it's like visually, is this an object with a key named item, or is this an array? Right. And so it seems useful to have it be something syntactically distinct that cannot be confused with an object. Otherwise, you have no idea what kind of thing you're working with.
I mean, technically, you could have a key of dot, right? Like as well.
That's true. Which is and you could have a key of a string that was empty square brackets, and so that's a fair point. So maybe like I don't know what the solution is, but it would be really ideal if somebody was able to come up with something that couldn't possibly be an object key. But I think the other question is, what happens in an object where the key has a space in it? Are you forced to put it in quotes?
Yeah.
You can have literally any character as an object key.
Yeah, you would be forced to put it in quotes.
Okay, so pick something that would otherwise be forced to be put in quotes to be an object key. And then if it appears without quotes, it is not an object key, it's an array item. Like you could do square brackets with a space between them. Automatically, it has to be in quotes if it's an object key, and not if not. And I don't know. This is a bike shed, but it seems like a useful property to end up with if someone can come up with a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave that as kind of like an unknown question or bike shed to consider. Other than that, we've I think really landed in a good place. We've kept one of the things that I know that you also had some pushback on, Jordan, was like the classes. We've kept these, but we've changed like the description to try to make it more reasonable why we are making this distinction for this set.
To be clear, I think the functionality is excellent and necessary. And I think as you've described it, and like those specific names, like after the dots in the bullet list, those are great. I'm literally just allergic to the word class here. And I think because it means so many different things, it was a mistake for JavaScript to pick that name for its inheritance syntax. It was a mistake for the web to pick it for CSS. Like it's just such a massively overloaded word. And nobody who's familiar with CSS is going to be confused, I think, if they see a selector starting with a dot and then the word class does not appear anywhere in NPM's docs to describe it. Everyone's just going to understand. And I think like in the worst case, and I think that in the best case, we'll have spared people a lot of confusion. So like, I feel a lot more strongly about the naming here than I do about the item thing. That like the word class should be like verboten.
I guess it's just, it does map to the CSS's like usage of the dot syntax outlining a class. But
this is sort of a reach, because like, if you're going to talk about mapping CSS stuff, there's like a DOM and specificity and like, we're not building up a specificity model here of like ID versus class versus element and so on. Like it just doesn't, like you are reasonably cribbing CSS's syntax here,
right?
But it does not map, no matter what. It will never map completely across. And so I don't think that that's a high priority, or that should be a high priority to have that mapping, because it just has to be something that feels reasonably intuitive if you're familiar with one and you look at the other. And I don't think the word class helps that case. If anything, I think it hurts it.
So what would you consider the name for, and we've used the name of like dependency types, I guess. So category. Type of a category.
I don't know. I mean, this is another thing I think we can think about.
There are defined sets of packages or dependencies that you have in your package JSON. And what are those? Like, what would we call those?
Well, I mean, there's 6 items in this list, and
they all reference package JSON.
5 of them are manifest object fields in package JSON. Workspace is the only one that's a little weird there, right? So
it's still something that you define in package JSON, though. They are all basically, that's how this is being mapped to, is
Right.
something that is defined via the roots, or not the root, but the ancestor.
But not the package JSON I'm looking at. In the child project, there could be dependencies, dev dependencies, optional, peer, and bundled. There will not be anything for workspace in the child package JSON. So that's why it's sort of special, because that's the only one that that has to look up to the root.
Well,
And
potentially we could have
can
nested
look
workspaces in the future. Potentially we could unlock nested workspaces, right?
But like something can't be both well, I guess it could be in multiples. Yeah, okay, so fine, but at any rate, it's like, what kind of dependency is it, right? That's
Right.
what that, and it can be one or more of these, right? You can have both prod and dev,
Right.
and so on.
So they're different classifications.
I mean, yes, I get why the word class is,
I know,
just
it's
as
overloaded.
easy a word to use on everything as util,
Or
right?
type,
But
right? It could be, there's
or
a million
type,
different
exactly.
types. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I have the answer off the top of my head. I'm just saying that I think almost anything is better than the word class. And like even type would be better than class. Although type is a little generic too. But yeah, I just really think it's important to pick a non-confusing term here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can start with dependency, and it can be either dependency classification, dependency categories, dependency type.
We prefix if you were okay with us saying dependency classifications, is that fine? I don't know. I mean, like, is this just in the docs that you're concerned about? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, think of how often on this very call we've all stumbled over the terminology for workspaces that I claim was mistakenly chosen. Like, this stuff really matters. It affects how we talk about it forever. It's not just in the docs. And the word class, I think, is just going to cause us a lot of problems. And this is like, before implementing this, like, that is our only opportunity to fix this forever. So it feels pretty important to me. I think dependency type is fine.
I would totally be okay with forever now understanding that a class of dependency is one of these 6 types. And if they expand, we have a future new class that gets introduced to this set. Our understanding of what that means to us is something that would be defined in your package JSON as a new set of dependencies.
I mean, how do people currently in the ecosystem describe prod, dev, optional, peer, and bundled? I don't think I've seen the word class used to describe them. And I bet
they might be types.
Dependency types is what it is in the code.
There you go. Because I bet Dependabot and Renovate in particular, and Greenkeeper once upon a time, have come up with terms for these because they had to describe them. So I think that I would look to whatever they define, and if they say class, like, I cave. But I don't think types, they do.
I'm concerned about types, and the reason why I would push back on types is that we get into types that has the same problem in that we've also used that to say get deps are a type of dependency, or link deps are a type of dependency, and so like that expands out the types like beyond this set. For sure. Like, it's like those are a different set or different classification, right?
True. And as Gar points out, Dependabot calls them dependency groups. I think Renovate might as well. I like that.
So dependency groups.
Yeah.
Groups sounds good.
Like I said, like, I don't think it's important what it is. I think it's important what it's not. So if types isn't ideal, then great, not types. But like, groups works. There's lots of other choices we can toss around.
Because these are like a subset of a kind of a larger taxonomy.
But since things can be in both, like, you can have a prod and a dev. I'm not sure how well subset maps to that, but
they're siblings, but they are still hierarchical, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know if we have to waste any more time on the RFC call bike shedding it. I just wanted to express that I think it's important it be bike shedded somewhere.
Right. Okay. I'll add a note about that explicitly as well.
Thank you.
And then I think other than that, I believe that Roy's already begun to do some initial work on this. So like, that's one thing to note is, yeah, we're excited to potentially have something to share and show next, when we see folks potentially in person at the conference. Yeah, Roy, I'm not sure if you want to share anything on that, but yeah, just other than development has kicked off this week.
Yeah, I guess that's the state of things. It has kicked off.
Cool. And obviously, like some of these concerns that are like left over can pretty easily be quickly fixed and changed. Like, I don't even think you're at the point where you're implementing the sort of those iterative operations or even the classes yet, or the groups, whatever we want to call them. Cool. Moving on then to RFC 548. This is adding flag for running commands and transitive dependencies. I'm not sure if there's any updates here. I know we had discussion last week, potentially, I'm not sure if Milf was on that call. But yeah, I think this comes down to us just implementing this like somehow. I forget, what was it like? What were the notes from last week? Okay.
Yeah, I think last week Jordan highlighted the fact that NPM has the dependency graph information and could do a better job of just properly using that order instead of just not ordering anything or
Right. So
Yes.
then what's the action on our end? Just like adding an RFC for this, or we get backlog the work?
I mean, there's kind of two features that are needed that are related, right? And one is the include transitive dependencies flag, where you ask it to run on some list of workspaces, and NPM also runs it on all of the other child workspaces that are transitively and linked. And separately, a mode where NPM figures out the ordering. When you ask it to run on a specific set of child workspaces, NPM looks at their dependency relationship and figures out the implicit ordering it must follow, and then runs it in that order with short circuiting. And both of those features require NPM to have figured out the dependency graph and the ordering. And so, like, I don't know what the best procedural way to go forward is, but like, it seems ideal if that core part could be built with both of those eventual features in mind, regardless of the order in which those final features ship. Did I explain that well?
I think, well, yeah. So there's one flag we need to add to essentially workspaces when running it's not any workspace operation, or is it just run script and exec? Because essentially, I think.
I mean, I think any operation that runs on more than one workspace, right? Because those all could invoke scripts like publish or start or whatever.
I wanted to capture here in the notes the two different modes you explained, Jordan, but I got confused here. So one is the topological order, right? So one following the
where you ask it to run A, B, and C,
right?
And then NPM figures out which order those have to run in,
right?
And then it runs them in that order with short circuiting. That's topological order. And then the other feature is you ask it to run A, B, and C, and NPM infers that it also needs to run D, E, and F.
Oh.
That's what the include transitive dependencies flag is.
Oh, I see.
Is asking for. Those are the two features, and both of them require the same dependency graph ordering knowledge in NPM. Once that order is determined, then you can do both of those features easily. And I really want the topological order one. Some other people really want the include transitive dependencies one. Those can be discussed independently and shipped in either order. I just am advocating that we build the core dependency detection part so that it can lead to both features. Because I think both have valid use cases.
Right. And so just to be sure I fully understand it here. So the topological order is the order that NPM read the dependency graph, or are you referring to the order of the arguments that you
No,
use?
like that the order of the arguments is irrelevant in both.
Is irrelevant. Okay.
Yeah, it's that if I ask it to run A, B, and C, and it knows that C depends on A and B, then it runs both A and B before it starts to run C. And if either A or B fails, C doesn't run. That's
right.
the top.
Independently, we need the topological order for both.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then with both of these features, only child workspaces are candidates, right? It's never digging into node modules. It's only running things within the workspace, right?
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
What about cross dependencies? Will we just explode?
What do you mean cross dependencies?
Well, conflict, like
a circle, a cycle.
Yeah.
One option is that it explodes and says this is a circular dependency. Use this flag to, run in the like current, whatever the status quo is called, right? Like versus the opposite of topological order, or we just run them together in parallel, or I don't know. I mean, I never have circular dependencies, so
lots of people do. Like, and the issues we get about this are because of this exact state.
Lots of people
because
do.
People are in this situation.
The open question is how many of the people that have circular dependencies should have them and want them versus have them by accident. That's a more editorial question, which maybe NPM doesn't want to get involved in. But my personal intuition is that virtually nobody actually should have them. And so exploding in this exploding in this case and with an escape hatch of like, just run them all in parallel seems fine to me, but we should get input from those who think that they want circular dependencies, obviously.
Okay, I think I've captured, I'm going to create two separate issues for this and backlog them. One is for, it seems like include transitive is fine for a flag, we can backshed the actual name. And the other is the topological ordering, which right now it is ordered by I don't know how we're actually ordering it, but I think it's when they're directly provided, it's in the order you've passed us, the workspaces, but providing this flag would essentially then reorder the workspaces. So I see the benefit in both these things, I think. So yeah, we can backlog them. Cool. And I think actually we can probably just get rid of the agenda. We talked about this quite a bit, and once I backlog these two items, then it's pretty much we've accepted the fact that we want this in core. So yeah, cool. So I've just removed the agenda label. Moving on to RFC 546. This is cleaning up file ownership. Roy, I know you brought this up just as a general thing to keep in mind. There's been some discussion and even some diagrams made by Nelf. He's even messaged here. Not sure.
Yeah, Nuke picked up to it last time.
Yeah. Obviously, Java Bud is not happy with our strategy right now.
Yeah, so the action item from the last meeting was to write an actual RFC. So, but you've highlighted a bunch of the findings or considerations last time.
I'm going to say he highlighted them in the call last time. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, just pasting the notes here.
And we agreed that we're going to create a RFC for this then.
Yeah, so I think we can just remove this from the agenda now, and we can start on the work on the actual RFC.
Just so it's on record here, I did find the comment I was thinking of about the last time we were talking about running things in topological order. Isaac explained why that may not be able to work. It may apply here, it may not, because we're talking about limiting it to workspaces. But I added the comment to the RFC too.
Oh, nice, thanks.
Okay, moving on. RFC 539, security auditing of block files for injection. Not sure if there was any update here. Oh, no. As of 8.6, we validate the shape of your dependency tree, make sure it's valid. I know he was doing work in that area, and we'll throw, we see entirely something was removed or entirely wrong version. This should lay the groundwork for further verifications like resolve and integrity values. So I think we can take the label, agenda label off this, because we're essentially doing the work to fix this up. We could potentially even close this if Fritzy is okay with it, based on the fact that we're continuing to add more checks. I see you're unmuted. Did you have a comment?
Oh, we already do this now. This was added. In fact, I just made a pull request to CI, making sure we don't nuke node modules till after this validation has happened.
Well, just feel free to reopen if you please. Okay, moving on to item number 8. This is RFC 519. This is mine for package distributions. Unfortunately, this has sort of stalled. I have not had any time to really look at this. Spent time trying to clean up the query, which is the last RFC I've really put any effort into. I'm not sure if I can get somebody else interested in this. I know actually there was an update from Roy where he had reached out to Mael from Yarn, and there was some interest by Mael to actually collaborate on this RFC to align with Yarn to ensure that we build something that potentially both package managers are aware of and implement sort of similar functionality around. So I know that they have a precursor RFC for variants, package variants, which is very similar, but the shape of our config is a little bit different. I also know that we would love to expand on the optional conditional depths, or have more conditions around optional depths. So that was, I think, the last update there was we were going to go investigate creating a separate RFC. Roy, I'm not sure if you had any other updates.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I think if you can expand on the RFC for more optional dependency types, that's probably a good thing to do meanwhile, but it might be better to actually wait, see if Mael can come back to us, right? Yeah, The Yarn version of it, the Yarn variants, has been open for quite a while too. So maybe it's for the best that we all wait a little bit more and we can collaborate and come up with a single unified solution.
Cool. So no real update there. Moving on to breaking change for bin. This is 479. This is command should not return non-existent pass. I believe we have this queued up, right? Is there a reason this got added to the agenda still? I think we were wondering whether or not, I don't know what the outcome was, but we were wondering what the value was of removing this.
Yeah, I added this to the agenda so that I wouldn't be the only one saying, this is how it's supposed to work. This is fine.
So what's the case? Like, we want to leave it or we want to remove it? Like,
npm bin is just a helper so that you can add the node modules bin to your path programmatically, right? I don't know what the use case is where it's a problem if that doesn't exist in a way that you wouldn't just be checking. Like, if you can
the
add
only thing I can think of is that if someone's using it in a subfolder to figure out where the root is, because the presence of a package JSON isn't sufficient for that. And I don't actually know though how well npm bin works for that. Like if I'm in a nested folder with a package JSON that just has a type common JS or type module and nothing else, and I type npm bin in that folder, do I get just /node modules /bin, or do I get like .. node modules bin?
I don't know. That's what npm prefix is for.
Well, I mean, if I type npm install, I know it goes up and finds the dependencies and installs them. So without a prefix of any kind. I'm just trying to like grasp at straws to see if there's any use cases for npm bin that aren't do this dangerous thing and put it in your path that there's been articles warning you not to do for a decade. Like, if there are no other use cases, then we should burn it with fire, right? Kill it with fire. But like if there are other use cases, then we could provide those use cases in a better way before killing it with fire, and then everyone's happy.
so this, as it is today, should probably be the breaking changes remove npm bin altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
To me,
and
not knowing the history of it, but understanding kind of how npm worked in the past, this is definitely feels like someone added this because it's a derived property that they wanted to be able to see, right? There's not a lot of value to this.
maybe I change this then. Where is this? Bin,
Last time we talked about it, we were talking about just like people should be using npx instead. And I know like Nilf mentioned, maybe we should just add support to the location flag to a npx so that folks can point to different locations to be reading the package from.
So what you're saying is, sorry, npm config supports a location flag today for folks that don't know. So we can specify where you look, and there's a set of, I think, 4 locations that are known to npm: projects, user, global, and I think there's something else.
npm exec will add support.
And then, so what you're saying is, yeah, now npm exec would now support that location flag and understanding as well to be able to execute within those locations. Is that,
yeah.
So that would override any other path or prefix that like was defined. Like location would essentially trump that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and hopefully like just be enough to support any use case that that npm bin was
Serving.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me add that quickly as well. So I've documented those now. I'm going to remove the agenda label from this issue and potentially actions.
So the action item here is backlog those items. This work. Okay.
Yeah. Features like the best safest option for the team. Done and done, updated and closed. Moving on to our last item with 10 minutes left of the call. This is issue 575. Feature requests run scripts should short circuit on script error. I think this is similar to what we were just talking about before, right? Or no, this is a little bit different. This would be providing a flag explicitly. Yeah.
This is sort of like the third circle in the Venn diagram of include transitive dependencies, topological sorting, and short circuiting.
It is, I think, orthogonal enough, right, that if I set, if I had false topological order, right, ordering, and
only in that case.
And I had specified, let's say, a few different workspaces that I wanted to execute some script in. And I knew that, like, as soon as it fails the first time, I don't want to continue execution. I don't want to waste cycles or whatever. Then this might be the flag that I would also define to say, you know, short circuit, right? Like stop, right? Yeah,
this seems like a, so there's whatever I don't know what the current mode is called, the one that topological is not, I don't know, parallel. So like in parallel mode, you certainly might want to opt into short circuiting, and you could use a flag to do that. In topological mode, you'd always have short circuiting. There's no, I can't conceive of a reason you'd want to opt out of short circuiting there. And so like, it seems like a flag, like something that will be much easier to add when there's command specific syntax, but like only allowing like all the places that the topological flag is allowed. So maybe that's another way to say it. It's a third mode. There's parallel with short circuiting, and then there's topological. And that way it's the same flag. It affects the same set of commands, which isn't just run script. It's also start and test and publish and pack and all the others. And it's sort of mutually exclusive with topological. I don't know, thoughts?
I don't have any immediate thoughts, but I do think that there's value in providing a flag where we change the behavior to fail early. And I knew that when we were implementing this and we decided not to fail early or fail that, you know, some people would eventually want that behavior.
I know last time you also mentioned RFC, the pipeline sort of thing as a maybe an alternative to the topological ordering.
Yeah, I mean, that's like more clearly defined, like if you want to define some other type of ordering, right, in some other kind of like manner, like reason why I reference wire it in my comment, and we talked about it a tiny bit last week, I think, was that they are tacking on to essentially run scripts like that understanding of like which things should run, not just, it's like build pipelines, right? At that point, it's not just run this command in the dependency chain or in the chain that makes the most sense, like based on my topological order, but it's actually like, oh, I want to run this thing, then this thing, then this thing, and for whatever reason one fails, and you don't have to have them be direct dependencies. Like if you're spinning up your server before you want to run your applications tests, it may not be that your application says that you have a dependency on your server, right? So it's like this separate kind of like configuration that you're setting, which I think is important. I think is something that we're going to want to look into eventually. But I do think it's separate from like maybe it's separate.
Like it has its own value, but there's a common case where it will always want the topological sorting, and being able to build on that with explicit sorting seems like a useful follow-on.
Go ahead, Owen.
Is there a case where like short circuit is off by default, and then you add it when you want it, and then topological just by default turns it on? So it's still like a Boolean, but to Jordan's point, where I think it makes sense, like you're kind of part of probably why you're leveraging topological order is, you know, for that kind of short circuit feedback loop in general. So is it just a matter of NPM coming with the default and then topological just turns it on? So it's off by default. If you're doing what you were just describing, Darcy, you could turn it on and put it into kind of your, you know, chained workflow. If you're running in parallel mode and you want it, you could also add it. And then topological still uses it. It's just implied that it's going to turn it on for you. And if you, for whatever reason, you want topological without short circuit, you just say short circuit off or something like that. So you can opt out as easily as you can opt in on a case-by-case basis with maybe just a preset for that one topological use case or scenario.
Yeah, we might want to look into what npm run all does, and also concurrently. I'm not sure what the configuration that both of those tools have, but I know that they are tools dedicated to advancing and expanding like your run script capabilities, right? And they've been around for a long time. The ecosystem uses them, and like we're getting into the territory of like, okay, I want to run scripts parallelly, like concurrently of each other. I want to run them in sync. I want to, you know, so, and it might be good to look at those and see if like even the name short circuit makes sense, or how we implement like a short circuit functionality aligns with like what those other tools have done. So yeah,
I mean, it could just be like fail early or something like that, you know, fail fast, whatever. It's just the behavior I want is this thing to just stop as soon as something goes wrong, you know, just because either I want the feedback loop, or, you know, if something really trivial breaks and my tests then run for 30 minutes in my CI just to fail because of that, you know, I think that's the value of the short kind of circuit behavior. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but like you said, it could just stand as its own, like you said, behavioral inducing flag that, you know, comes with a very specific binary behavior that you can layer on top of other like script running methods. You know, it's like all I care about is if an error happens, just stop. However you're running my stuff, just as soon as something goes down, stop.
Yeah, I just want to be mindful because there's so many. There's probably like 5 or 6 or 7 different, you know, issues and conversations that we've had over the last couple of years about roughly around the same thing, which is like, do we run things in parallel? Do we run them synchronously? Or what is the order we run them in? So like those are all kind of like similar conversations. And then in terms of like how we handle errors, that also plays into all those things. So like Jordan said, like maybe just in this call even, maybe those are all just the same flag and they're just different modes. And like, so you could even say, you know, like, topological ordering fail early or something, like it's one big long, whatever, like very explicit name. But yeah, I think that what needs to be done here is a little bit more research. I would love to look at like the other tools and what the other tools are doing. And like a lot of people come with us sort of just trying to solve the one problem, but like we're going to want to solve this, I think, holistically for.
Well, does NPM currently run anything in parallel? I mean, I say parallel, but it's really just like random order, right?
Right. And so that's when you were saying like the things are right now run asynchronously. It's like, no, that's not the case, actually. It's like,
well, and that's good because my experience with concurrently and parallel shell is that when everything passes, they're great. When something fails, I have seen the overarching command pass, which made me rip it out of all my projects because I don't want CI to ever pass when something fails. So like how to juggle that and manage that correctly seems critical if NPM ever runs 2 things at the same time. But like,
which is something we do. I think we've been asked for quite like we've been asked for concurrently and run NPM run alls like parallel implementation. We've been asked for that quite a bit, and like the you know the popularity of those tools also tells us that the ecosystem obviously wants that from like from a tool. So yeah.
Like I can also envision if you do topological sorting that there's going to be like topological sorting will create a pipeline, right? And each step in the pipeline will have 1 or more jobs to run. And I can see extending that so that whenever there's more than 1 job, it parallelizes those, right? And before it moves to the next node in the pipeline. And
there's no reason we can't offer whatever we're doing there to the rest of the ecosystem, right? Like, so like any strategy that we find that works for us, including like how to, you know, obviously speed up the execution and synchronously or asynchronously like do operations. It's like, let's provide the same kind of tools to the ecosystem. So anyways, I apologize. We are essentially at time. We did get through the entire agenda though, which is great. I think this is one we'll keep on the agenda and we'll like continue to talk through. I think there's probably some work we want to consider how we, again, address this more holistically, but I think the idea of having some sort of flag to like obviously short circuit would make sense. It's probably the easiest one to actually implement compared to the other topological ordering sort of config. But yeah, thank you everybody for jumping on today. Feel free to continue to add RFCs and also add to the conversation in the existing ones, and hopefully see you next week. And wanted to quickly note before we do go, we will not be running a call the week of the OpenJS World. So we'll be doing it in person and hopefully maybe even virtual as well. Call for our Collab Summit session, which may be the Thursday or the Friday of the week of June 6th. So that's 2 weeks from now, or 2 or 3 weeks from now. But we will be here next week. So same time, same place. Hopefully see you then. And yeah, thanks for jumping on.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.